Hello, everybody. Thank you once again for joining us. We're glad that you are listening or watching to this episode of the podcast. We have an interesting film for us to review and discuss on this fine evening. We hope that wherever you are comfy and doing splendidly. My name is Juan, as always, here with my main man, Kevin,
Hello, everybody.
missing my other main man, Mark,
Miss
but,
you.
but still, we like movies. You, you. That's our in studio audience. As always, please remember to subscribe, follow us, like us, comment, let us know what you think about a particular review or just what we're doing in general. And if you'd be so kind, share on your social media pages. Um, there's also links on on the show descriptions, on the episode description, where you can email us if you'd like, or even you can go to the website Buy Me a Coffee and donate and support what we do. Actually, have a hand in helping us make it better. But anyway, enough of that. Like I said, we are here to discuss a film. This time around, it is my pick, and the film is a 2018 release in the genre of American neo noir crime thrillers. It stars Mel Gibson, Vince Vaughn, Tory Kittles, Michael J. White, Jennifer Carpenter, and Don Johnson is in there. Also, Thomas Kretschmann. The film is Dragged Across Concrete. Um, it is directed by S. Craig Zahler. Also written by S. Craig Zahler. If you don't know that name, you might be familiar with some of his other films. One of those being Bone Tomahawk, and the other one that I had heard of at least was Brawl in Cell Block 99, which I hear is also really good. As I was saying, the film is produced by Summit Entertainment, as well as a plethora of other production companies distributed by Lionsgate. Was released on September 3rd, 2018. Has a lengthy runtime of 159 minutes, which is what, 2 hours and 39 minutes, and had a budget of about $15 million. Was not released widely. So, from what I can see, box office is just under half a million, just over, sorry, $500,000. Um, what else what else can I give you here? I can give you a little bit of the synopsis or the teaser for it. It says, once two overzealous cops get suspended from the force, they must delve into the criminal underworld to get their proper compensation. Again, this was a movie that really. Oh, and the tagline is, those who can't earn a living must find another way to provide. I guess I'll share why I picked this film, Kevin. If you're listening, if you're paying attention, let me see the whites of your eyeballs. There you go. Um, uh, but yeah, the reason I picked it, this movie I had come to my attention, as I think it did for many people, because it started to gain traction on Netflix this past year. Um, People started to discover it and kind of really, I think, fell in love with it. And just saying that it was very underrated, obviously, because it was so under the radar. So that was interesting, and I think there was also rumors, that there was also a certain backlash because I guess it had some conservative, maybe, or like anti woke, um, subtle underpinnings or something like that. So yeah, but I still wasn't super interested in watching it until I saw Bone Tomahawk, which again was written and directed by the same writer and director as Craig Zahler, and to me that movie is kind of a masterpiece. Um, I would love to just talk about that movie at some point because I loved it. But anyway, after having watched that, I've also heard Cell Block, Brawl in Cell Block 99 is really good. But anyway, at that point, I was like, all right, now I really want to take a chance at watching and reviewing Dragged Across Concrete.
Take a chance
Uh,
on me.
and my initial thoughts, I guess, to kick off the episode and the review of the film is that I didn't quite love this as much as I did Bone Tomahawk. This was even more of a challenging film to watch, as Craig Zahler um, does not do sort of, from what I've seen so far, doesn't do kind of bite-sized, easily digestible, cookie-cutter films. This movie is long. It has long shots, a lot of character development. I guess some controversial stuff, depending on where you are in the on that sort of social spectrum. Um, but I still liked it. I think it's very very thought provoking. I thought there were some really interesting things that he did with the story, with the characters, um, a lot of depth and a lot going on, overtly, but also underneath the surface. Different commentaries that I think he's making about society, about law enforcement, about race relations, about where we are in the United States, as far as just society and economics and the different classes. Um, so some really interesting things. The film is on Rotten Tomatoes. Why? Sorry, that was annoying. Has a 76% critic score and a 67% audience score, and I feel like while I my percentage, if I as a critic, would probably be a little bit higher. I feel like the audience score is fair, if not even a little uh, what do you call flattering,
Generous.
because yeah, generous, because I think it is a challenging film, not only for the length of it, but again the way that the story is told. It requires patience, lots of patience, because sometimes there's just stretches where nothing is really happening. But yeah, I liked it, and I'm excited to get into it. Kevin, your initial thoughts?
All right, take cover, everybody.
Oh dang!
Um, I really like this movie. I was surprised. I may be rating it higher because I have yet to see Bone Tomahawk or Brawl and Cell Block 99, which somebody told me work backwards. See Cell Block next, and then uh, Tomahawk. because he goes, Tomahawk is his greatest one, so you don't want it to ruin the other ones. So again, I really like this. I had 4 points of contention that if you remove two of them would have made this a near perfect movie for me, and we'll talk about that. Majority of it is probably the first 30 seconds of the movie and the
Mm.
last 5 minutes of the movie. Like if he would have just
Okay.
put him on chopping block, cut the ends off, I would have thrown this into like a perfect stellar, almost stellar movie. There are two things in the middle that I do want to talk about that I had slight issue with, but they're just personal things that aren't so bad.
Hmm.
Um, but again, it's a great movie that deals with flawed heroes.
Hmm.
Um, they're dealing with moral dilemmas, and they're actually dealing with it. They're not like, okay, they've come to this decision to do something and they're okay with it. They keep fighting it. They're like, no, we're not supposed to do it, blah blah blah. Are you sure you're in? Are you? And they keep fighting back and forth, and even up to the end, what happens with Mel Gibson's character, we'll get into it. Like he's still fighting the flaws in him.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like his distrust, he wants to control it. He wants to, and there was a lot of great character movements in it. And even though like she got billed Jennifer Carpenter, I loved her character and how she was what she was dealing with. She was very short, but again, there's no small parts, just small actors, and I think she did a really great job in what she was portraying, even if it was a little over the top, but the character. But I really thought it was great, and it added to it. I would have liked to see a little more development on the bad guy side, but we can't. They would have pushed the movie into like 5 hours, so
Yeah.
um, it was good. And again, like I think the only little quibbles I had on the middle, which aren't big, is the stakeouts did drag out, but I felt like that was necessary because they were trying to make us feel something. And again, it's just me. Didn't feel like what they got recorded doing in the beginning was that bad. I thought we were gonna see them like beat the living daylights out of
Yeah.
somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, he had his okay. You shouldn't have your foot on it, but I'm like, all right. I'm like, oh, you tossing iron? I'm like, I don't know what that means. You just had a
Hmm.
gun on somebody you're arresting, and that was it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Other than those little quibbles, like I said, I really enjoyed this movie. I was every time I paused it because I had to deal with my daughters, I was like, wow, a lot of time has passed, and I didn't even realize it had passed. So
Yeah.
to me, it was chewing up a lot of time really quickly.
Yeah.
Even though it was, I'm like, man, it's dragging out. But
Hmm.
I do feel that added to it. But overall, I really liked it. It felt like it was a throwback, like in its vibe, even in some shot selections and how they were moving the camera. It felt like it could have fit back in the '70s with like a modern version of Thief that we reviewed or something else. Like it really did feel gritty. It felt dark, and overall, I was really really pleased with it. Even though I did roll my eyes when I saw the runtime in the beginning,
Hmm.
I was like, man, I really did enjoy this movie.
Yeah. I was even though I was aware of the movie, I did not think it was that long. I thought it was going to be 2 hours max.
Mhm.
So those 40 minutes, I was unprepared for going into it. But yeah, glad I watched it. So many things that you mentioned that I want to earmark so that we don't forget, because I would like to spend some time on so many things that you shared there. I will start off by just on a personal note, Jennifer Carpenter. I want to shout out because she is married to half of my favorite musical duo, which are the Avett brothers. She's
Mhm.
married to Seth Avett. So I don't see her in a lot of things. So it was nice to see her. Um, while I understand, while it her role and her that sort of plot point added some depth to what happened in that particular part of the story. I do think that was something that could have been cut out to shorten the movie. Um, what else? What you were mentioning. So first, let me kind of give a recap for people. And at this point, you are warned that spoilers are ahead. Although I don't think I'll give much away here. But so
Spoilers.
these two cops, these two partners, these detectives, actually, they're kind of on a stakeout, waiting to arrest this guy, hanging out. outside of his balcony in a New York city neighborhood. So it's like the fire escape, and when he comes out, they kind of have a little trap set for him, and when he comes out, they arrest him. The character played by Mel Gibson has his foot on the guy's neck, just kind of suppressing him, and then they handcuff him. He at one point, I think, maybe mushes his face a little bit into that balcony, and so he's a little bloodied up, but it really wasn't very super violent. In terms of some of the things we've seen in real life, it was pretty mild. Um, but anyway, a neighbor was recording it, so they are going to hand it over to, of course, news media, to release it for everyone to see. Police brutality, police, violation of use of force. So their chief lieutenant, played by Don Johnson, brings them in, has a conversation with them, explains, hey, times have changed. I don't think what you did was all that bad, but realistically, where we are today, especially with law enforcement, oftentimes it's viewed as perception is reality. So they get suspended for 6 weeks without pay. This obviously puts them in a bind financially. His partner, played by Vince Vaughn, wants to propose to his girlfriend and wants to provide her with a certain life. So now he feels, like the way that things are going for him in his career brings into question. And then Mel Gibson has a wife who has a physical handicap. She has multiple sclerosis, I think is what it was. And
Yeah,
yeah, and the neighborhood that they live in has become more and more dangerous to the point where his daughter is. Well, what we see is there's a group of boys and they're kind of bullying her, and they throw a soda on her as she's walking home from school, and apparently things like this have happened before to her. So um, his wife kind of puts pressure on Mel Gibson to say, like, hey, we need to move, we need to get out of this neighborhood. Who knows how much trauma is being done to our daughter, and who knows, as she continues to develop and she's very pretty, who knows, what could happen down the line. So obviously, as a man, as a husband, as a father, and as a provider and protector, he feels the pressure of all that. And so he's like, all right, I have to do something about it. So he finds a connection that gives him a tip on someone that he should probably keep an eye on and follow, that could lead to something that might have some money at the end of it, that he could obviously steal. And use to his advantage. He brings his partner in on it, but and kind of just lays it all. Hey, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna follow this guy. We're gonna watch him. We're gonna see what it leads to, and if it leads to money, we're gonna steal it. He gives him the choice: are you in or are you out? He has. So the difference between them is Mel Gibson has been in the force for a long time. Vince Vaughn is more of the younger guy. Um, and also because of that, he hasn't been around the block as much. He hasn't seen as much, so his high moral character is still further is still pretty much intact. Whereas Mel Gibson at this point has learned where to bend the rules and whatnot a little bit. He still has high character, but is more stained, I think you could say, and hasn't advanced in his career. So anyway, they decide to do it, and they're staking out this guy, and there's a big chunk in the middle, where they're outside of this apartment, just waiting to catch a glimpse of him and being able to follow him. They eventually do, and that leads to a bank heist, and I'll kind of leave it at that. Right, that I'll leave that there. To what you said, Kevin, about the first 30 seconds of the film. So I press play on this last night. My wife, I'm in the living room. My wife is in the kitchen, and I'm like, "All right, this. I've heard that this is violent. That's okay." I watched Bone Tomahawk. that was violent. I was okay with that. It was graphic. It was violent. It was a horror western. So I expected similar things like that, but although it is crime, and sometimes in crime it's almost like they have to throw in, a strip club, or a stripper,
Mhm.
or some nudity or whatever. But still, I was like, nah, I don't think there will be. Literally, the opening scene of the movie is two naked people, a guy on top of a woman, a prostitute, and they're
Just going
having
at it.
just, yeah, going at it. So I press stop, waited for my wife to go to bed, and finished watching that. Fortunately, that was the only
Uh,
instance in the movie. It lasted about 30
uh,
seconds, and it just
uh,
set up that. um, so again, so then the other side of the story is that
Wait,
we're
hold on.
following. Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Before you go on, I literally told the girls, I'm like, Bone Tomahawk. They and they like violence. I'm like, girls, you want to watch this movie? I'm gonna watch. I'm like, all right,
Oh
they're getting
boy.
snacks. I push play. I saw that scene. Pause it. I'm like, they're coming up. I'm like, girls, you ain't watching this movie with me. I don't know what's happening in this movie. And they're like, oh, but you said we could, and now I say you can't.
Yeah.
Get out the room. But
Yeah.
literally,
Exactly.
that's why at least it was in the opening. Because if it, can you imagine if I'm watching the movie with them
Yeah.
and then boom, I'm like, whip.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
sorry,
So
sorry.
yeah, it was only in the opening. Never happened again. But yeah, so the other I guess side B of the plot is that you're following, this black man who was just released from jail, or probably more like prison, for maybe a few years or something like that, and he is, getting back. We see him, getting back home. We see him with his best friend, and they start talking about, hey, you wanna get back in, and he's like, hey, give me some time. He goes to settle some business at home. He has at home, it's just his mom and his little brother, who's a teenager, who is paralyzed from the waist down. So he starts to kind of set things in order at home, and then shortly thereafter, he is back in. His friend has a good opportunity for them. Maybe a simple, easy job through some connection. It turns out, we find out later on, that what they're going to be doing is, in an interesting disguise, they're going to be the drivers, in the driver's seat and the passenger seat, kind of being the getaway drivers, for these guys that are doing this bank heist. Um, so yeah, those 30 seconds were a shock. Um, but yeah, so that was the beginning. Why don't we talk about your other
The
your other
end.
quibbles?
Well,
Yeah.
if we do the end, like if they would have left out that 11 months later part, just ended it. I thought it would have been so much more powerful because now we know that he got well. The one who ends up with the money is this black convict who that through Mel Gibson
The
has been
only
trying
one
to
that
turn a,
survives.
the
Yeah.
only one that survives, right? But he still says, "I'll give him." He goes, "I won't give him 40, but I'll give him something." You could have left that all to our imagination. We didn't have to see the him walk in and tell Ma, I know how you like getting a massage, looking at the ocean. You're not even looking at the ocean, ma'am. She was looking at the door. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I'm like, and I felt a little lackluster with the game room. We didn't need that. Um, I could have been left to my imagination that the girl doesn't know what happened to her dad and stuff. It's just showing it all. Just felt like it was tacked on to wrap it all up, give it all a nice, complete ending. When
Hmm.
I thought the ending right before that, when he's walking away, buried him. He's like, when this is all said and done, I'll come back to bury you proper. And it just goes up into the sky. Could have ended there, and I would have been like, beautiful.
Yeah, I hear you. Although I
But
think that ending is actually very, very important in what actually happens and what's being shown. So what the bank heist was, right? I mean, they ended up with about four massive duffel bags of gold bullion. And again, it's this black gentleman. His name was, um, let's see.
They called him Slim.
Yeah, they called him Slim.
He
I don't
was
remember.
he was Henry.
Oh, Henry. The actor's name is Tory Kittles, by the way, who
Yeah.
I thought did a phenomenal job and looked so much like oh, what's his name? Um,
What movies did it?
Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, okay.
Looked a lot like Kendrick Lamar, and also like
Yeah.
a buddy of mine from college. But so the ending, I think that it was important because one, I think it shows, we get a glimpse into all of these lives, right? And so if you go back and you watch where this guy started to where it ended and everything in between, I think it really gives you this idea of not only, how he transformed his life, but also how at the both the strokes of luck and fate and how you finish is not always the same as how you start. And even though he was this criminal, served time, ended up actually, killing Mel Gibson's character in self defense, and actually it then had a monologue, or no, a dialogue in which he said, "I've never killed anyone before." So it kind of throughout, all these characters, it's the this gray area, right, of good and bad, of actions and consequences, of means of survival. So I think it the more you kind of think about it and how that final scene fits in, and what you're seeing him in this, giant house. It was very white, in front, and that's obviously a symbolism for like purity and innocence, right? Which is very interesting. And Ocean View, his brother is in a game room, right, where he's surrounded by every video game imaginable, right, and he wants to design video games, right. So now it's like a generational shift, right, where even though you can't excuse the things that he did, what he's doing now is providing an opportunity for his brother to not have to go down that path. So there's some interesting layers there, but most importantly for me, though, was that final line, and even the final scene of him going to his brother, because earlier on they're playing this video game, and the video game is about these gentlemen hunting big game, right? They're hunting lions, which is so interesting because like who does that, right? Black people. Well, stereotypically, black people don't do that. Hispanic people don't do that. White rich people go to Africa to shoot.
which which they do mention the first time they're playing the game. It's like, no, that's what
Right,
rich white people do.
right. And so then at the end, he's like, "Let's play that game again," and his final line is like, "Let's go hunt some lions." It, I felt like that again. I can't quite put my finger on it, but if I could sit and think so much more about that and see what it is that that says, about the mentality of that character and what he's been through and how he's kind of changed. One of the other things that, for example, I found very interesting was that, the movie, the parallels between Mel Gibson's character and Vince Vaughn's character as the two police officers, and then Slim and Muscles, or Biscuit, as was his
Biscuit.
name. Yeah, Michael J. White's character, right? Where for most of the movie, we see both of them sitting in front of a car together, kind of having similar relationship together, where one of them is older and wiser and kind of helping the younger guy through the situation, and then even going to the extent, right, where S. Craig Zahler even has the two black guys in this white makeup, right?
Full white chicks, but and white dudes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which was such a great part of the film when Vince Vaughn catches on to that, and no one, I hadn't, but he's like,
Yeah.
wait, those are the two guys. And I was like, oh, snap. There was something odd looking about them.
Yeah, I thought they were the other guys that were in the van when they showed up. I'm like, oh, they
Yeah,
just switched places. I'm like,
right, exactly.
oh,
But
ooh,
but
real quick, but
interesting. Hold on, that he
oh,
has them in this white makeup for most of the movie, really drawing a direct parallel between the other two white guys, and kind of just saying, you know, different worlds but different circumstances, could be anyone based on decisions that you make, again, upbringing, nature versus nurture, society, all that stuff. So there was just some really interesting things there beneath the surface that I think he was trying to highlight.
real fast, we'll get right back to it. You reminded me of another quibble,
Okay,
a fifth
great.
quibble. When they followed him to that garage, and
Yeah,
then to stake them out, they did a U-turn and parked right facing the garage. These people come out, they don't notice the one car in this empty field. Then they
yeah.
drive. Not only that, then to follow them, they take off over the curb, over
Over
the median. I'm
yeah,
like, how did
yeah,
you not get seen? That was a little
yeah,
cool. Everything else I thought was really well planned. I'm like, that was just ridiculous.
yeah, I agree. um
But that was just a quibble. I'm like, all right, you got to suspend belief for a movie.
for me, I and maybe it was just maybe it's just my attachment to the character coming out, but Vince Vaughn's death and the way he
Oh,
died
oh.
was pretty brutal. And the fact that, I mean, are we on the same page, right? That the assumption is that they gave her a gun and said, Go crawl and kill this cop, or else we're going to kill your family,
Yeah,
or,
because that's what you said. You
whoever.
need to do what you would have to do. She was supposed to kill both of them. So, or else they had her address. They'll go kill her family.
Yeah.
And that's why when she was crawling out, I was like, they're calling like, no, you need to tell that lady to stop. I'm like, at first I
Yep.
thought maybe she had a bomb on her,
Yep.
and the tension that it created because she wasn't even talking. I was like, does she have something in her mouth? I
Yeah.
thought maybe she had a grenade in her mouth. She's
Yeah.
walking up, and
Yeah.
and then finally she talks like, I'm coming, and I was like, don't. I'm like, why are you letting this lady come? I'm like, obviously she did not overpower three guys with guns.
Yeah.
But it created such great tension because it took forever for her to crawl there,
Yeah.
and then she pulled out the gun. And you're like, mother.
Yeah, it happened very quickly, but that I think that's the part that annoyed me the most, because it seemed like Mel Gibson's character should have known better. And like if
Mhm.
it was just him in that situation, he would have stopped her and said, "No, wait, what are you doing? Tell me more. Let me see your hands, this or that." Like, but I couldn't understand, and maybe I'd have to go back and watch it and just try to see for the subtle signs or whatever, why he succumbed to, where the whole time it's very clear he's the one in control. He's the one
Mhm.
calling the shots. He's the one dictating every move. And Vince Vaughn is going like, hey, do we do this? How do what do you think is happening? Going to him for everything. In that moment, he let Vince Vaughn just run with it, and obviously he was feeling very compassionate for this woman. Throughout the movie, he's very heartbroken about the people that are dying that they possibly could have prevented. So this was a vulnerability and a weakness of his that in that point cost him his life. But it just, like you, as I thought about it, I was like, man, that just doesn't make sense that they just let her approach like that without at least a slight round of questioning before that happened.
Yeah. And then the way I rationalized it, I guess, when I was watching the movie, is Mel Gibson also, when they drove by the bank, he saw they killed everyone in the bank.
Yeah.
And then, even though he wasn't answering the questions, he was trying to act stoic. I do believe Mel Gibson's character was in conflict with that. Like, hey, we let everybody die. We have to try to save this woman. You know what I mean? As opposed, if that bank part didn't happen, they may have even shot her. But like, hey, this
Mm-hmm.
isn't right. But they weren't thinking about that. They were thinking, hey, we're trying to save this. We're trying to get one win. Because they're still,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, they're still cops, whether they have the badge or not. They still
Yeah.
had that within them, even if he was a little bit, and he wasn't corrupt really. He pushed the lines. This was the first time he's like, no, we're, because they said we had time to take we had chances to take bribes. We never did it. Why not? He goes, because now we don't have jobs and we're suspended, and now we have families to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I think at that point when he realized he's still a cop and he still was guilt ridden over what happened at that bank.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that leads to what happens next, because he starts getting angry and upset because now he let down his guard, and now his friend's dead.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great explanation. Yeah, I think that's very makes a lot of sense.
Like I
So,
said, the struggles that they had, I think, really lifted the movies up because, like I said, they just weren't. Hey, we're gonna do this, and we're like they kept struggling back and forth, and every time something new happened, there was another struggle that called back to the previous struggle. And even when he was saying, "Oh, you're not all the way in yet," and he's like, "No,
hmm
I am in, but you're not all the way in because this is not who you are."
hmm
And I think that went for Mel Gibson also, and that's why he was feeling, you know, hey, you're not all the way in because I don't think Mel Gibson necessarily wanted. He just wanted a clean heist. Let's get out of there, and that's it.
hmm
And it was you could see, and especially their acting jobs, you could see that it was weighing down on Mel Gibson's character and
hmm
Vince Vaughn's character.
yeah. One of the other things that I think it's a minor um, quibble, I
A
guess.
quib, a quib.
But the other bad guys that were in masks the whole time. Number one, I wanted to see their faces. Like I was hoping that that was going to be revealed at some
Uh,
point.
in the credits, there were gray gloves and black gloves.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Although they both look like black gloves to me, I didn't pay
I know.
attention to that. But then, so when they were, I mean, they were clearly psychotic. But so when they were doing those small time robberies and then killing the people, you know, without giving it a second thought. So they were just doing that to raise the money to buy that van. Like they
That's
never
my
really explained that.
that's my guess. But like, even though there were three of them, we I only thought it was the one, the main guy. I forgot what
Yeah,
his
I
name
know.
was
Uh-huh.
because I thought he was the guy doing all that. And then in the credits, you find out no, it was Black Gloves doing like the small time ones because you would just see this one guy go to that little room and do all the calls and do all that stuff. So I just thought they were like two regular henchmen, but apparently they all three were working in as a team.
Yeah.
So my guess is they were because he does give the guy the duffel bag and it's like, hey, to get that armor thing to get the bigger. It felt like almost like a video game. They kept leveling up to do, and I guess the ultimate prize was this bank heist in the middle of a city in the
Yeah.
financial district.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that again, I don't know as Craig Zahler's point of view and why he kind of left. Again, it's already a long story, and I think you alluded to this, but I do see that as a flaw that the villains went a lot more underdeveloped. Um, even because even I found myself even fascinated by them, and wanting to know more about them, especially the main guy, because you know, I mean, again, they were all psychotic and ruthless and cold, but he was so calm and composed and like in charge, and what was their plan actually, and what was going to happen next after they got to that getaway car, and yeah, who were they? Where were they
Right.
from? Like,
And even just going off their voices, like two of them had like accents. One sounded
yeah,
straight American. I'm like,
yeah,
oh, all right,
yeah,
they're not the same people because I didn't know who was who because they were all in the back of the van. But when they
hmm
talked, they had distinct personalities, and I
yeah,
was like, all right, this is kind of cool. And again, maybe you alluded to, even though I did like her performance, maybe if Jennifer Carpenter's thing had been cut out, we could have developed them a little bit more, and all you needed was her returning back to work with the little sign like, "Hey, welcome
yeah,
back," and "Oh, I miss my baby," and that would have established it.
yeah.
But again, I did, yeah, that is an issue that we were left wanting more about these people instead of just, especially you gave one a name. He was Vogelman.
But also, so you have Jennifer Carpenter's story, right, where she is a mom just coming off of maternity leave, but she has very evident signs of postpartum
Hmm.
or like post or separation anxiety, like
Hmm.
crippling separation
Ugh.
anxiety. it was I mean, it was so. What was cool about it is that really, like, that was a story in itself within the story. Like,
Yeah.
just the story of that family, her. Then you find out her husband. You know, he's like, and again, it's again pointing out,
Mm,
like where we are in society and the fact
yeah.
that I guess he was staying home more because she earned more money, and so she was
Mm,
going off working. Although it was super difficult for her to leave her baby, which is a really cool, I think, even thing to explore and delve into. Again, just the differences between men and women, and women feeling that being designed to have that maternal instinct to want to
mm,
be with their child and to be at home, and you see that at play there. And then that so sad, even that moment, with her and her husband, and she's
mm.
like, I just want to see him, and then I just want to touch him, and he's obviously feeling for her and empathizing, but also wanting to help her and giving her some tough medicine anyway,
But
all
for the
that was
record,
fine.
it was not medicine she needed. I was like, dude, get two jobs if you don't make as much as her. Let her stay home with her baby.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah, 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 we could go on with that for
sorry,
sure.
but
That's a
yeah,
valid
it's
point.
yeah.
But then well, and I don't. Yeah, okay. But anyway, so all that is fine. We see her trying to get on the bus. She gets on the bus. She's composing herself. She walks into the bank. You could have cut the whole thing with Mr. Edmington and his weird language and his vocabulary words and his heartfelt expression of how much they missed her and how beautiful she is. And like, it was funny. I liked it,
Dude,
but it was also not
that
necessary.
that dude looked like he should be hosting inside the actor studio.
Dude, that guy's great. He's in Barry, and he's
Uh,
awesome in Barry. And
uh,
I recently saw him in something else too. But when I saw him, I was like, yes, this guy's in this. And then, but his character was kind of ridiculous, so over the top, not very realistic. I mean, are there maybe people really like that? Sure, but it was a little bit over the top. And again, in the grand scheme of things, that's a good 3 to 5 minutes that you just didn't need to have in there.
uh,
Because there was really no other point for it than to give us an idea of the setting of her workplace, and also
yeah.
maybe for us to feel bad for him later
See,
when
like,
he gets his penis or his balls cut off or whatever it was.
uh,
They don't show
see,
that, but
well, in theory, he didn't because there was nobody else. They probably just shot the dude. But I think it was to make us like this whole group because they weren't being nasty to her that she was 4 weeks late coming back from maternity leave.
uh
And they were they were hyping it up, and then all of a sudden everyone shows up and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna kill everybody here."
yeah,
But like that's where like even though I like and there's stuff to talk about the story before that with Jennifer Carpenter's character. If you knock out that 10-minute scene, you could have just had her coming back to work. It's like, hey, and then you could have had your her boss being all happy that she's coming back. You establish all that, and I swore she was going to be the hostage. I was like, oh, they're
mm-hmm.
going to take her a hostage. Now her husband's going to feel bad. And when they blew off her hand, her
Yeah, dude,
fingers, I was like, whoa. And she was
yeah,
trying to do the right thing. That guy was a douche.
yeah,
Um, they blew her, and she's like, just tell my baby, boom, and they just blew her head off. I'm like, whoa.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a big gut punch. Um, the other really sad scene was Vince Vaughn's rejected proposal.
Do you think it was rejected, or do you think she accepted
That
it? But he's like, it's not what I wanted to hear because he was dying.
had not thought of that, because
That
I think because of the way it was acted. Because I
uh,
think that if that was the case, I would have think that excuse me, I would have thought that there would have been even just a subtle curl of the lip, like a subtle smirk or something, just to
Mm-hmm.
show like I'm happy, but then in an instant like reality sets in. Oh, I'm dying too. So no, my initial instinct, and I continue to stick with it based off of um, also just their previous conversation, is that she probably said no.
Like
Which then,
I
but then also
uh,
remember, then he's like, "Oh, you want me to destroy the phone or whatever," and then
yeah,
he does it. So that
yeah,
too.
because this is why I thought. At first I initially thought it was a no, but then I was like, wait, what if he said, what if it's yes, but it's not what I wanted to hear because I'm dying, and do you want to destroy the phone? Yes, because he's like, I don't want to be remembered for this. So they could trace the phone, they could follow all that. I don't want any of that. I mean,
Hmm.
that's why he wanted everything destroyed, and because they were very big about. I hope this isn't what I'm remembered about for. And he's like, I'll keep your name out of it.
Hmm.
So
Could
that
be. I
so
mean,
that's
it's
why
that.
this was later on, like when they're doing stuff. I was like, well, what if it was a yes?
Yeah, it definitely is more of an interesting angle. So, and I can't say that it's not possible either. It's 50-50.
Yeah, because she showed up to his house. She's like, oh yeah, I'll meet with you after I do this
Yeah.
for what was his name, Tony, I think, or
Yeah, I think
yeah, for
so.
Tony. Yeah, for Tony. Once I do this, I just take care of this thing for Tony. We can meet. So she was happy to do it because she loved them. So I don't see why she would have said no. I don't want to marry you.
Yeah, no, it's true. I guess we'll never know,
Especially,
but
yeah, especially
yeah.
when you get to the point of proposing, you're not going to surprise the person. Y'all probably already talked about marriage and wanting to get married.
Hmm.
So and again, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's rare that a guy gets to the point of proposing to someone he's been with for a while and he doesn't know that the answer is going to be yes, even though it's nerve wracking to do.
Hmm.
Like you're like, hey, I know this person. 98% is going to say yes.
Hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. Hadn't occurred to me, but I think it's a very interesting point, and it's very possible. So let's talk about, again, going back to not the ending, but just before that. So after the whole shootout in this vacant lot, the only survivors are Mel Gibson and Henry,
Henry,
aka
slim.
Slim. And of course, one's a cop, one's a criminal, one's black, one's white. Um, Although at that point, I think Henry kind of has the upper hand, but they come to their senses, right? And they go, well, there's plenty here for both of us. Um, Obviously, the lingering question is, do we trust each other? Not only to not kill each other right here, right now, but even further down the road. To not revisit this, or Henry, of course, had shot a video of Mel Gibson, Detective Ridgman, who's the one who eventually killed the lady who killed Tony. Of course, this was, again, after she had killed his partner. So he was justified in killing her. But again, in a video, perception is reality. So he had that over his head. So step by step, they decide to go through with it. I felt like 60-40 was dumb to agree to. Why not just 50-50?
Mhm.
I think he could have made a case for that.
Well, I think it was 60-40 because he had the video.
Yeah, I guess 70-30, and then they went with 60-40, which he
Yeah.
agreed to. Um, and then they're very careful. Mel Gibson's very careful about saying, we get the guns together to throw them out. We do this, blah blah blah. So they're planning it. So they still, their doubt and their skepticism remains intact, but they also know that there's something, if they're able to you know get through it. there's a huge reward for the both of them. And it seems like they're doing it. They get to the point where they dump the detective's car in a lake. I believe the final thing after that is just to bury the bodies.
Hmm.
Um, but and then we see that each one of them actually has a gun hidden. I don't blame them, just in case. But then, right as they dump that car, Mel Gibson, who's very quick on the draw, pulls out his gun, holds it up to Henry's Slim's neck, and is like, "This has all been great, but I'm gonna need that video because I don't trust you. 5 months, 1 year, 5 years down the road to not release that." Which again, you brought up the point that it's kind of his inner demons coming out in that moment, but I don't blame him, man. You can't let
Yeah.
that video exist.
Well,
Obviously, Henry's thinking the same thing. Like, actually, I need this video,
yeah.
so that you're a cop, so that you don't come after me or you don't turn me in or whatever. So, like, this is my insurance policy, but so it's a catch 22. It's a lose-lose situation. Mel Gibson's not gonna let that go. And I mean, how no matter how much money is on the line, like how could you?
Mm.
You're talking about, again. I mean, the ultimate consequence which he pays is far worse, but I don't think that he might never have had peace. Even having the money, but knowing that that video was out there. So I ultimately just don't think that that fate could have been avoided. Either they both would have killed each other, one would have killed
Mm.
the other, but I don't think that both of them walking away was ultimately, in this universe, a possibility.
Yeah, because once they went to split the gold, one of them was going to pull a gun and say, "Hey, I don't agree to 60-40. I'll give you like 10 of these and you get out of here."
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Or again, Henry was afraid that, well, what's to stop him from just pulling a gun on me and arresting me and taking all the money from me?
Yeah,
So, like I said, there were great characters that were very flawed,
yeah,
and you wish that you could trust people. And I think they did try to show it that Henry was more trusting
yeah.
than
I
Mel
think
Gibson's
so.
character,
Yeah,
because he was willing to go along. He's like, all right, we're in this together. You know what I mean? The only way it would have worked out if he was like, all right, Mel Gibson, character was Brett. He goes, take out your phone, record me burying this body. You know what I mean? Now you have video of me, I have
yeah,
video of you, and now we
yeah,
both have our nukes, and it would have been fine.
yeah. That's what I was thinking just now. Is that,
Hmm.
and again, first of all, it's a movie, but
Yeah.
also, but you do, you put yourself in those shoes, and that in that situation, with all the tension, with everything that's going on, with the possibility of all the money, but with all the doubt and all the fear, um, you would think, yeah, why couldn't you just be more rational and come up with? They were both very smart guys, so why couldn't
Hmm.
you have come up with something that would have just satisfied both parties? But um, but yeah, it just wasn't meant to be, and it cost Mel Gibson his life. Although ultimately, um, was able to provide for his family.
Yeah. Like it did work out. And again, like I said, it would have been, and I know you like the ending, but again, in my head, it would have been, I could have filled it in the same way. Or I could have been like, you know what? He didn't give them the money, he just kept it all. Or like maybe he did give them the 40. Like it would have just, I would have filled it in myself. But it just felt like at that point, especially after we just went through all this tension, the build up with the hostage, and then the dumping everything, and then the killing, and it just felt like it would have been a great cutoff point to
Well,
just
and even though I think it also showed, like, I think there's also an expectation, right? And maybe that speaks to maybe the stereotype of, maybe black people, and specifically, maybe like black criminals, right? That that it, because maybe of society, of what they're born into, and that's not just limited to black people, but the movie portrays black people. That's why I'm
Yeah.
specifically speaking on that. But so maybe there's a stereotype, right, that they're just stuck in this vicious cycle, right, and
Yeah.
so that once you begin a life of crime, you're going to just continue and even pass that on. And so, in opposition to your open-ended
Huh.
ending, I think this one shows, like, again, even if you were in that life of crime at one point, um, and not that this is something to achieve, but there are those who, again, that life of crime maybe is a means to an end, and once they have, at least this character with his lucky break, he did not use that, to continue to maybe create or continue to perpetuate that cycle of crime. He um, actually escape that, and you see the contrast too between that same family unit, right, which is him, his mom, and his brother. Now what their situation is, right, where the mom was having to become a
Prostitute.
prostitute, yeah, to provide for them. Now she's getting massages, right, now she doesn't have to do that now, and obviously his brother is going to be taken care of. He's going to get to go to design school, and he is not, living a life of crime, right? He made a comment about, I've been looking at numbers all day or something. So
Yeah.
he was probably meeting with his accountant, talking about investments or something like that.
His
So I
broker.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think it just kind of shows, like, um, even though the beginning and the middle was terrible, you know, from this twist of
Mm.
fate came something
And
good, even though
yeah,
it
and
involved all this loss and all this tragedy.
no, and that's to me was implied when he's like, again at the end, well, where I thought it should have ended when he said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of them." And even when he said, and he didn't have to say it to anybody at that point. When he's like, "I'm sorry I had to do you cops like this. I promise I'll be back, and I'll bear you proper." He goes, and then he walks off, and I was like, to me, once he did that and walked off, I was like, oh, I didn't know the 11 month part was coming up. So I was like, oh man, this guy took care of his like the cop's family. He got. I'm like, I was happy because I'm like, oh, he got himself out. And then they showed it, and again, I just felt like it was more not heavy handed, but it was just not necessary. Again,
Yeah,
it could have been because it was at the end of 2 hours and 30 or 40 minutes.
yeah,
That I was like, oh, this part's not even really necessary.
yeah,
Because while I do like the line, all right, let's hunt lions, I thought it was a great line. I didn't really get how it applied to him because he wasn't the one doing the hunting. You know what I mean? Everyone else did everything, and then he not lucked his way, but he used his brains, and he was like, "Hey, I was able to survive this situation because he had the gun and cellophane already wrapped. He had the recording, he had all this stuff that helped him get out of the situation."
uh-huh.
So I didn't see how the "Hey, let's hunt lions." Like maybe if he was the one who's like, "Hey, I'm taking down all these people," then he's like, "Yeah." But that's why to me, I was like, I don't feel like he's a lion hunter because I felt like that line was more about power and like being, like strength. I thought his strength was in his brains. Even when Mel Gibson's like, "Oh, why do you speak like that? You're a lot smarter than you let on." He's like, "Oh, don't let people know how smart you are."
Yeah,
And I think it wasn't about hunting lions or whatever. It's about just being smarter, than being the smartest person in the room, but not letting people know that.
yeah, so to be more, um, to expand a little bit more on that, I don't think the idea is that now he's a lion hunter. I think the idea is, again, who are the people who hunt lions? Let's just say it's people in the 1%, right? Very wealthy people, most of the time white people, not always, who go to Africa to hunt these exotic animals, right? So I don't think it was, okay, now I'm the hunter of lions. I think it's almost him, again, really transforming himself into, because of this great wealth that he's amassed, into just having or being able to relate or just understand that mentality of like what why those people do that and search maybe for that thrill. It's almost like he's getting a taste of it or like tapping into it. So it's almost like him getting into, this club that's guarded by these gatekeepers that for someone like him, from his upbringing is most of the time impossible to get into. But now that he's there, he's amassed crazy wealth. His wealth is growing, right? Because he's investing and doing all
Yeah.
this stuff. So now he's, I think, just gaining this perspective of, being like a person in that stratosphere.
But I think, and not necessarily agreeing with you, but something that, like, while you were talking, I was like, well, this is what came to my mind about that. Um, I don't know why it came to my mind. Like, I was listening to what you were saying, but it could also be that, yeah, he's in the situation where now he's in that 1% world, brokers, and this and that. He goes, yeah, I took care of the last thing I had to do, was to send that package off. And the only thing he wants to do now is sit on the couch and play this game that they played when they were poor. And he's like, you know what? Let's hunt lions, because I'd rather hunt lions with my brother just here playing this video game, because that'll bring me happiness, because none of this other stuff brought him happiness. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's
Just thinking
possible.
of
Yeah,
just
that's
that
another
just
angle.
popped when you were talking about it. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe he doesn't like being part of the one. Like, you like the money, but he doesn't like it because they're not going on a real safari. They're playing the video game again.
hmm It's yeah. I mean, I think that's an interesting angle. So,
Oh, oh,
yeah,
before we start hitting it, I do want to. There was two things I wanted to bring up. And I looked at my notes just now. When they were staking out that parking lot again, it was ridiculously bright for 5:45 in the morning.
yeah,
Well, he's like, let's wait till 5:45 a.m. Walks
yeah,
by, I'm like, that is midday
yeah,
light.
yeah. And there were some great moments, during the stakeout. I mean, I love
That burnt.
crime
Oh,
films. I love, cops on a stakeout films. I mean, this was more cops on a stakeout than I've ever seen in one film. But there was some great dialogue. Vince Vaughn had some great lines, some really funny
oh,
stuff.
oh.
I made a mental note that said, show me two cops on a stakeout in a movie. That's like my daughter watching Cocomelon to me. I just I love that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to point out, well, or highlight, um, as Craig Zahler, very different um, films, but reminds me a lot of Terrence Malick in some
Oh,
way.
okay.
Very different styles and approaches, but has a very unique cinematic voice,
Yeah.
and just the theme, and again has this way of, there's a plot and there's a story, but the way that it's told and the way that he reveals his characters on the screen, it adds all these layers with all of these really interesting, reflective, thematic questions. So, for me, that's who I would compare him to. A lot of people, or Terrence Malick is not, his films are not easily digestible. I think, again, just because of the genres that Zahler is working with, I think his films are a little bit more relatable and approachable for most people. But I kind of see them in a way as, two sides of a similar coin. And I think what what seem the stories that they're trying to tell and the way that they're trying to do it in these very human stories and characters. So I think that's pretty interesting. And to you, I was going to recommend, I think you should watch Bone Tomahawk. um, I haven't watched Brawl in Cell Block 99. Again, I've heard good things, but the reason I would say you should just jump in and watch Bone Tomahawk is because you are a man who appreciates a good western,
I
and
do.
this is an excellent western, which with Kurt Russell. So I mean,
Oh, is there any sex and nudity or just
no.
violence?
Well,
Oh,
there's no female nudity. There's
well,
there's a backside of a naked male.
oh, it's like Young Guns when they stand up out of a tub and you see a butt.
This is not like Young Guns, my friend.
You've
This
never
is
seen
not
Young
like
Guns.
okay, but I'm telling you, what happens to that naked body
Oh,
is nothing near what happens in Young Guns.
so you're saying it's not a movie to watch with my daughters?
No, it would probably give them nightmares,
They're strong girls.
but you should watch it.
All right.
All right, I have. Do you have any final thoughts before I jump to
Oh,
some fun facts?
one final thought. I like there's things that for some reason just felt real in this movie. And one of the parts that felt so real to me is when Mel Gibson was waiting for Vince Vaughn at 4:30 in the morning on the street. Because
Yeah,
I felt like I've been there waiting for someone early in the morning, like, and they're not there at the right time. But then with the stuff that was happening in the street, like the guys jumping the gate, the bum, I've used to Uber, and I used to Uber overnight, and I've been in Liberty City at like 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, picking up people, and I have seen stuff like this. A guy on a bicycle coming up and knocking on my window asking for a cigarette. This old dude riding off into the night when I told him no. I'm like, wow. I'm like, I really felt that one scene so much. I'm like, hey,
yeah,
I've been on those streets.
yep,
And to me, it added a whole bunch of realism. And again, I don't know how many people would relate to that if you haven't been out in the streets at 4 in the morning for no reason
hmm
and noticing stuff. But it is a weird world out there.
Fortunately for you, you're speaking to a man who's done that very same thing, driving Uber in Philadelphia, dropping someone off in a neighborhood where I went. Yeah, I want to try to get out of here as quickly as possible after I drop this person off. I won't be picking up any rides around here at this time of night. So yeah, I can relate.
And then the only other thing I wanted to say real quick, there were great lines, there were great quips in it. My favorite though, my favorite line was when Mel Gibson was telling Vince Vaughn, "You don't have to be here. You have no obligation." And he just looks and goes, "My
Oh
word is
yeah,
my obligation." I was like,
yeah,
"Oh!"
yep,
I just wrote down. I'm like, I have to write this down. My word is my obligation. I'm like,
yeah,
dang, Skippy. And then it made
yeah,
it so much worse when he died. I was like, ah,
yeah, yeah. He's super likable character.
yeah,
Um, but also, I big props to Don Johnson. His appearance was brief, but I thought the scene was powerful, and
yeah.
I thought um, second to Django Unchained, it was a superb performance from
It
Don
was.
Johnson.
And it gave us just that scene gave us so much information on Mel Gibson's
Yeah,
character about
right.
that's why I'm sitting here, you're doing that. Hey, you
Yeah,
didn't used to push it this much. Now we've known like it gave so
yeah,
much, and it just gave it naturally. Not oh, I'm gonna sit
yeah,
here and tell you, look what you've done. No, just in
yeah,
that conversation was so good.
yeah, yeah. It was really good. All right. So apparently, the studio at one point, was kind of begging S. Craig Zahler to edit the movie down to a quote audience friendly 130 minutes. But he was not happy with this request. He has a final cut clause in his contract. So the film was released with a limited theatrical run and same day digital, which mirrors his other releases. And the film was kept at 159 minutes.
I gotta wonder, like, how profitable are his films that he gets a final cut clause?
I know.
Because
I
they don't
know.
make a lot of movies, but they could be very profitable, like on selling them digitally and streaming
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
So
And a $15 million budget. I mean, this movie again. I want to say it was earlier this year, was, if I'm not mistaken, definitely in the top 10, maybe in the top 5. It might have even been number 1 at some point. I'm not sure. On like Netflix most watched.
Yeah.
Like it became really popular at one point.
Huh.
So yeah, and then Bone Tomahawk, I only heard of it, and for me, it only I've only ever heard it mentioned because of the gore. I've never heard anyone say, "Oh, it's such a good movie, such a great western, such an incredible Kurt Russell performance," um, and so I was blown away. Like to me, it's a masterpiece. Like
Oh,
it was a great, in some ways, like a great classic western
hmm.
with all of, with a lot of those, um, uh, just those. What am I trying to say here? Um,
Cliches.
yeah, like cliches, but keystones
Okay.
of a
But
western,
what's
but then also
uh,
doing something brand new.
like
It was it was
like
awesome.
I've only heard of Bone Tomahawk because of Mark, who
Yeah,
loves the movie, and I'm surprised that you're telling me it's a western because I thought maybe it was like a horror of some guy modern day, you know, killing people with a tomahawk.
yeah,
And now that you're telling me it's a western, like Mark doesn't like westerns, so I was like,
yeah.
oh, I'm like very surprised. Never once thought it was a western because of that.
Well, Mark watched it because he heard about the gore.
You know, and that again, all I hear from Mark is the gore. Like not the gore. He's like,
Yeah,
oh, it was just awesome. It's gore. Well, I'm like, okay,
it's fa-
and we know he likes
yeah,
that stuff.
bro. It's someone gets kidnapped, four guys going to find her. So it's again, it's like a simple Western
Huh.
idea, but dialogue, everything about it was so
So
good.
it's high. It's Shanghai Noon is what you're saying.
Yeah. Um,
Wait,
so
are we in fun facts by the way?
yeah, I already did the first one.
That's what I thought. Fun facts with Juan.
Um, Apparently Vince Vaughn, who again has worked with S. Craig Zahler before in Brawl in Cell Block 99, while working on Hacksaw Ridge, directed by Mel Gibson. I guess he's the one that showed Mel Gibson the screenplay, talked up Craig Zahler, and yeah, Gibson really liked it and agreed to star in it, which was a great combination. And I mean, when you have someone with the directorial track record of excellence that Mel Gibson has, for him to be impressed with S. Craig Zahler and then sign on to star in that movie, that tells you a lot right there.
Oh, well,
Um,
but apparently half the people in this movie were in Cell Block 99. I think.
oh, okay.
Like when I was looking at the cast, like Jennifer Carpenter, the guy you
Oh,
liked,
okay.
who I said looked like inside Actor Studio,
Yeah.
like those, and I think a couple others were in Cell Block 99.
Okay.
Another one.
This might even blow your mind even more, just about that previous conversation about how he has that final cut clause. It's the first film directed by Craig Zahler to receive an official rating from the NPAA. His previous films were released as unrated.
Really? They would.
And
Oh,
last but
that
not
does blow.
least,
Another one.
director S. Craig Zahler has written all the songs for the movie and even performed one of them.
For this movie?
Yeah,
Wait, what wasn't the soundtrack like the OJ's or something?
I thought so.
Like I thought
I
at the
don't
end
know.
it said like the OJ's. It could have been the OJ's performed by something. Yeah, look. The duo wrote several solo pieces and recruiting the rhythm. Oh, so they wrote them, but the OJ's performed most of them.
Oh wow, okay,
Okay, but he didn't
interesting.
write them. Oh man, I'm not gonna lie. They sounded like they were real songs that have probably been on the
Yeah,
radio for a while that I didn't know.
and it
I
was
think
good.
that
The
uh,
soundtrack was good.
That's why it threw me back to like 70s, 80s because it had like the OJs, I guess. I don't really know who the OJs are, but it had like a nice rhythm and blues type sound to it.
Yeah. Uh
Okay.
oh, Kevin, you will
Oh,
appreciate this. Stephen Craig Zahler, born Miami, Florida.
what? Hold up. I was not prepared for that. Like that, he was born in the 305?
Say
Yeah,
what?
a Jewish man studied film at NYU. But someone, if you've never heard of him and if you've never watched any of these films that we've been talking about, watch them, and definitely is a director and writer that must be on your radar because
I'm like,
he's
okay.
knocking it out of the ballpark.
Oh.
And with that being said, I shall we go to our ratings?
If you are ready for, I was looking. Oh, he also did Puppet Master: The Last Reich. You don't got to watch that one. But, but I think I saw a little piece of it. I'm like, you're fine without it.
All
Hold
right.
on.
So
It's ratings time. Click on the ratings. Little Jerry's? You know that's right.
So, yeah, for those unfamiliar, we do a Little Jerry's rating scale, 1 to 5, 5 being the highest and best,
The apex of the mountain.
the apex, and 1 being the lowest. Do not
The
do not recommend.
the anti-apex.
Yeah, the Zpex. So for me, again, I'd say 2 for 2 so far on S. Craig Zahler films, and from what I've heard about Brawl in Cell Block 99, that would probably be my third one that I watch, and it'll probably be 3 for 3. Really exciting writing director, telling some really great stories. Um, this one, told within a popular genre. Same for Bone Tomahawk, but just doing it in a fresh way with a unique voice, great perspective, and also just a great directorial touch, and obviously getting some great performances out of his actors as well. So I enjoyed it. Again, for me, the apex of his career is Bone Tomahawk, from what I've seen so far. But and so Dragged Across Concrete, while it's super thought provoking and there are so many interesting things that he's saying, that he's shining a light on in this film. Um, Again, just relatable characters that are just gray. You understand them and empathize with them in a way that really makes, outside in this movie of those bank robbers who were psychotic killers. The other guys, from the detectives to Slim and Biscuit, um, and the character played by Jennifer Carpenter and everything like that. Well, not so much her, but anyway, it was a good character. But yeah, I mean, really, from the protagonist, no good guys or bad guys. Just kind of realistic people in tough situations, trying to survive, and so very fascinating. Um, the I would definitely watch this movie again, and I wouldn't fast forward, but there would be parts of it that I would want to go quicker just to get to something else, even though there were good moments of dialogue and still important and good things that happen in those scenes. There definitely was a feeling of, dragging, and then of course things ramped up and you're like, okay, cool. But there were some things in the middle that I uh, just out of preference would knock it some points a little bit would like to see a cut of the film a little bit shorter, just with maybe some things that were not super necessary to the story. Again, like the speech from the bank manager, although it was funny and entertaining, it wasn't critical to the story. So maybe cutting that out and just making it a little bit slimmer. But yeah, great performances. I love Mel Gibson, love Vince Vaughn. So cool to see them teaming up for this one after Hacksaw Ridge. Anyway, so for me, I would give this. I'm gonna go 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. Little note that I saw as we were reading, he's part of the director and writer is part of a duo, a synthesizer duo called Binary Reptile.
Synthesizer?
Yeah, a synthesizer duo named Binary Reptile.
I'm wondering if he wrote. No, I don't think so. Well, like I was wondering if he even wrote those jazz pieces, that jazz music that was playing in like Vince Vaughn's car and in his apartment.
I think so because, like I said, everything I saw was by the OJ's and by this. So apparently, it was all written by him. But okay, so with me, I did like this movie a lot. It was a story about quote unquote good guys struggling to do a bad thing and trying to make the best of what they can. That's just not the cops. That's the guy Henry also just trying to make it through. I thought they were very well developed characters. Very characters with real struggles that we saw actually play out, and who made mistakes, who made errors, who made dumb things. As we talked, I did knock it down a little bit as we were talking because, again, as we talked about underdeveloped, bad guys and why are they doing this? What's going on? What's the plan? And maybe that's not the focus, but for me, it would have just rounded out the movie a little bit better. I do think the stakeouts went on a little bit long, and they ordered a ton of food through this movie. He was always sending Vince Vaughn to get food. And
do you imagine being on a stakeout with a guy that's eating 2 egg sandwiches
yeah.
on pumpernickel or something?
Yeah. And then even when they were eating it, like when Vince Vaughn was eating that burger, he was like, an ant could have eaten that burger faster than you.
Yeah.
And I felt like I would have had that conversation with you if I was taking my time. You're like, are you done yet? And it just gave it a realism to it. I did enjoy it a lot. I think people should watch it. Again, I wouldn't recommend it to just everybody because, again, it is a little heavy and a little slow at parts. But it is a movie I do think people should watch. I'm going to go with a solid 4 out of 5 also. And I can't wait to watch Bone Tomahawk and Cell Block 99.
Wow. Not this. Well, since it's been the duo of Kevin and Juan, minus Mark, I'm pretty sure this is the only time that we've gotten the same score, same rating. It's probably even when it was the three of us, and even of all the films that we've done. Well, there was movies that there was a few of them that we all gave perfect scores to. So there's that. Yeah. But I would dare to say that you could probably count at this point we're in the 70s, maybe close to 80 episodes, close to 80. And I'd say you could probably count in one hand the times that we've gotten the same score.
Yeah, me and you tend to be on polar opposites.
Yeah.
But if I loved it, you hate it. If I hate it, you loved it.
And I thought you were going to... I thought because of how long it was and how slow at times, I thought you were going to dismiss it. I didn't think you were going to like it.
Well, I liked it because, to me, it fed into the narrative. There's other movies that I felt were long for needless reasons to be long, and nothing was happening, and the story wasn't as cohesive. I thought this told a good narrative. Like, it checks off all my marks. It told a good narrative, developed characters well. I thought the resolutions were well done. Even though, again, for me, if you would have just chopped off the 30 seconds and the 5 minutes, it would have probably gotten a higher score for me. Like it would have ranged closer to 5, but just for my personal preferences, knocked it down a bit, and then some other stuff. But like I said, it wasn't just because it was like just being slow. I did think it added more to
Yeah.
what we were watching, the suspense and the build up,
Mm-hmm.
and actually
Yeah.
liking these characters and wondering how it was going to end.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. So 4 out of 5 for me, 4 out of 5 for Kevin. In our book, that makes it fresh. So
not
if you
Frozen.
get if you get a chance to, you can watch this on Netflix, or on Tubi. Although, man, it felt like there were a lot. I watched this on Tubi, and it's the
Oh,
commercial. So first of all, the commercials make it even longer,
yeah.
and it
I was
just
like,
felt
wow.
like there were so many ads in this one. Maybe it's just because the movie's long, so clearly there's going to be more ads.
And then those ads
But
always come up in the worst spot.
that was a little rough. That didn't help the experience also. So if you can watch it on Netflix, watch it on Netflix, and avoid the ads. But if you don't have Netflix and you still want to watch it for free, as always, Tubi is a great option. They do not sponsor our show, but they could.
Not
So
yet.
Tubi, if you're listening, we have glowing remarks about you all the time. So anyway, yeah, good conversation. Thanks, Kevin, for watching the movie, and for
Thank you for
yeah,
picking it.
yeah, no problem. I think I know what's coming next, so I'm excited about that. I won't spoil it here, but make sure to like we said, follow, subscribe, like, share, comment, do all those good things, and as always, stay tuned for the next one. Thank you for listening. Uh, later,
Thanks for all
haters.
you out there. Later.